Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a part of Roman history that rarely makes it into the epic movies or glorious documentaries. Forget the emperors, the legions, or the philosophers. We're talking about the grimy, disgusting, and often downright dangerous jobs that made the Roman Empire function. You know, the ones that make your Monday morning commute look like a spa day. We're talking about awful jobs you could have in the Roman Empire and more. Seriously. After this, you'll be grateful for your desk job. Trust me, you probably wouldn't survive a week doing any of these. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in the sprawling heart of Rome, a city of a million souls, a marvel of engineering, and a place where the grandeur literally sits atop a vast, hidden, and incredibly foul infrastructure. You are about to become a member of the human sewer crew, one of the most disgusting and dangerous jobs in the entire empire. Forget the sparkling baths and elegant fountains. Your domain is the shadowy, stinking underworld beneath the city streets, specifically, the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's colossal sewer system. Imagine your daily routine. You descend into the darkness, not with a flashlight, but with a flickering oil lamp that casts long, dancing shadows on the slick, slimy walls. The air immediately hits you. A pungent, overpowering stench of human waste, decay, and stagnant water. It's a smell that clings to your clothes, your skin, and your very soul. You quickly learn that breathing through your mouth is a rookie mistake. The taste is even worse than the smell. This isn't just unpleasant, it's a constant assault on your senses. Your job is to maintain this vast network of tunnels and conduits. You wade through ankle-deep, sometimes knee-deep, torrents of raw sewage, navigating in near total darkness. Your feet slip on unseen debris, and the constant fear of stepping on something sharp or falling into a deeper, unseen pit is always present. You carry heavy tools, picks, shovels, and rakes, to clear blockages, tree roots, discarded household waste, even animal carcasses, can clog the system, and it's your job to manually remove them. It's a disgusting, thankless task performed in an environment that would make modern sanitation workers recoil in horror. The dangers are manifold. Beyond the obvious health risks from constant exposure to human waste and disease-carrying vermin, you face the very real threat of structural collapse. These are ancient tunnels, and while remarkable for their time, they can be unstable, a loose brick, a crumbling section, and you could be buried alive under tons of earth and effluent. You also contend with noxious gases, particularly methane, which can build up in stagnant sections. A single spark from your lamp could ignite these gases, leading to an explosion that would instantly kill you. This isn't a job. It's a constant flirtation with death. Then there are the creatures of the deep. Rats, fat and fearless, scurry in the darkness, sometimes brushing against your legs. Snakes, spiders, and other unsavory critters also call the sewers home. You are operating in their territory, and they are far from welcoming. Imagine the jump scare of a rat suddenly splashing near your feet in the pitch black. It's not for the faint of heart or stomach. One surprising, though often overlooked, fact about the Cloaca Maxima is that it was originally an open channel built by the Etruscans centuries before Rome even became an empire, only later covered and expanded by the Romans into the marvel of underground engineering it became. This means that the work of maintaining it stretched across millennia. Your payment for this daily ordeal is meager, just enough to survive, perhaps a few sesterces a day, certainly not enough to escape the squalor of your own life, and your social standing. Abysmally low. You are considered one of the lowest of the low, constantly dirty, constantly smelling of the sewers. People avoid you on the streets, holding their noses as you pass. Your very existence is a testament to the fact that someone has to do the truly awful jobs, and in Roman society, that someone is you. The health consequences are almost guaranteed. You constantly battle infections, skin diseases, and respiratory ailments from inhaling the foul air. The Roman understanding of hygiene and disease transmission was rudimentary at best. So you have no protective gear, no masks, no gloves. You are utterly exposed to the raw sewage and its accompanying pathogens. Your lifespan is likely significantly shorter than almost anyone else in Rome, a grim reality that you learn to accept with a weary resignation. Academic debate still exists on whether the Roman sewer workers were primarily slaves or poor free laborers. It's likely a mix. But for either, the conditions were undeniably horrific, highlighting how essential, yet dehumanizing, certain jobs were in maintaining the grandeur of Rome. So, as you emerge from the dark, fetid tunnels, covered in filth, your lungs burning, and your spirit heavy, you understand the true cost of Rome's magnificent infrastructure. Someone had to literally wade through the city's waste to keep it functioning, and that someone was you. This job, and others like it, were the invisible, repulsive foundations upon which the empire's glory was built. And this is just the beginning of our exploration into the awful jobs of ancient Rome. Next, we will visit a place where cleanliness truly is next to godliness, but the cleaning material is, well, let's just say it's unique. You've just emerged, reeking and relieved, from the dark embrace of Rome's sewers. Now, imagine a different kind of stink, one that permeates the very air of certain Roman workshops. Your next awful job in the Roman Empire is that of a fuller, a person whose entire livelihood revolves around cleaning and treating woolen cloth. Sounds simple, right? Just wait until you hear about the cleaning agent. You find yourself in a fullonica, a Roman fullery, a specialized workshop for processing woolen garments. The first thing that hits you is not just the smell of damp wool, but a far more pungent odor, the sharp, unmistakable ammonia tang of stale human urine. Yes, that's right. Urine. Specifically, aged urine. Collected from public latrines and even individual households. This, my friend, is your primary cleaning solution, and you are about to immerse yourself in it, quite literally. Your main task involves trampling dirty woolen clothes in vats of urine. Imagine large, open tubs filled with the yellowish, murky liquid. You, along with several other fullers, strip down, step into these vats, and begin to stomp, barefoot. For hours, you press the fabric with your feet, churning the urine and the dirt together, working the ammonia into the wool to break down oils and stains. The liquid splashes up, soaking your legs, your body, your face. The smell is overpowering, nauseating, and relentless. It seeps into your skin, your hair, your very pores. This isn't just unpleasant. It's a profound assault on your personal dignity and hygiene. But the job doesn't end there. After the initial stomping, you then have to rinse the cloth, usually in running water, but the smell never truly leaves. Then comes the process of fulling, or beating, the cloth to felt it, making it thicker and stronger. You might use wooden mallets, pounding the damp wool, a repetitive and physically demanding task that leaves your arms and shoulders aching. Then, the cloth needs to be whitened. For this, you use sulfur fumes. You hang the cloth over burning sulfur, inhaling the choking, acrid smoke as it bleaches the fabric. It's a noxious process that burns your eyes and lungs, potentially causing long-term respiratory problems. Finally, you might be involved in napping the cloth, brushing it with thistles or teasels to raise the nap, making it soft. Then, it's pressed using heavy stones or screws to give it a smooth finish. Every step is labor-intensive, dirty, and often dangerous due to the chemicals and the heavy equipment involved. Your social standing as a fuller is, predictably, quite low. While you provide an essential service to Roman society, clean clothes were a sign of respectability, and woolen garments were a staple, your profession is considered dirty and somewhat contemptible due to its association with human waste. People might wrinkle their noses as you pass. Knowing what you do, you are rarely invited to polite company. One common misconception about Roman fullers is that they solely used urine for all their processes. While urine was crucial for washing due to its ammonia content, fullers also used a special type of white earth called fuller's earth for degreasing and cleaning, and often employed specialized presses and dryers. However, the urine trampling part was undoubtedly the most memorable and unpleasant aspect. The health risks are significant. Constant exposure to urine and sulfur fumes would lead to skin irritations, respiratory issues, and various infections. Imagine the bacterial infections from constantly wading in human waste with open cuts or sores on your feet. Your hands are perpetually chapped and raw from handling wet, treated wool. It's a job that guaranteed a shortened, uncomfortable life. This job highlights a fundamental truth about Roman daily life. What we consider utterly disgusting was simply a practical reality for them. They understood the chemical properties of urine for cleaning long before modern science. And someone had to do it. That someone, often a slave or a poor free person, was you. Academic debate still continues about the exact compensation and working conditions for fullers, particularly whether free fullers could achieve a comfortable living despite the nature of their work. While some fullers might have owned their own businesses and attained a degree of prosperity, for the laborers like you, life was undoubtedly a grueling, smelly existence. So, as you step out of the fullery, your clothes still faintly carrying that unmistakable ammonia scent, you realize that even the seemingly simple act of wearing clean clothes in ancient Rome came with a hidden and profoundly unpleasant human cost. From the sewers to the laundry, the Roman Empire was built on the backs of those willing, or forced, to do the truly awful jobs. And this is just the beginning of our exploration into the dark underbelly of Roman labor. Next, we will enter an arena where the ultimate price for entertainment is paid in blood. You've endured the stench of the fullery, the burning of sulfur in your lungs, and the constant soak of human waste. Now, prepare yourself for a journey into the most brutal, yet paradoxically celebrated, of Roman professions, the gladiator. This isn't just an awful job. It's a life defined by violence, pain, and the almost certain prospect of an early, gruesome death, all for the entertainment of a bloodthirsty crowd. Imagine your arrival at a gladiatorial school. A ludus. You might be a prisoner of war, a condemned criminal, a rebellious slave sold by your master, or even a desperate freeman who voluntarily sold himself into servitude due to debt or a craving for fame. Whatever your past, your future is now defined by the arena. The moment you cross that threshold, your identity is stripped away, replaced by the harsh discipline and brutal training regimen of the lanista, the head trainer. You are given a simple, often crude, uniform and a weapon. Your new tools of trade. Your days are a relentless cycle of physical exertion and combat training. You learn to wield various weapons: the gladius short sword, the trident, the net, the shield. Depending on the type of gladiator you are destined to become. You practice endlessly against wooden posts and fellow trainees, your body aching, muscles screaming, and sweat pouring down your face. The training is designed to make you efficient killers, to move instinctively, and to endure pain. You are fed a diet of barley and beans horderii, barley eaters, as you're often called, designed to bulk you up and provide a protective layer of fat, which, strangely, was thought to make wounds less immediately fatal and more spectacular. It's a testament to the grim efficiency of the system. Even your diet is tailored for death. The conditions in the ludus are harsh. You live in cramped, Spartan cells, often chained at night to prevent escape. As Spartacus famously demonstrated, discipline is brutal, enforced by whips, chains, and the constant threat of starvation or execution. You live in a constant state of fear, knowing that your life is not your own, and your ultimate purpose is to die spectacularly for others' amusement. Then comes the dreaded day, your first public fight in the arena. You march out with your fellow gladiators, the sunlight blinding after the dimness of the ludus, the roar of the crowd, the sheer deafening volume of thousands upon thousands of Romans cheering, booing, and demanding blood washes over you. It's an overwhelming sensory assault. You are no longer a person, you are a spectacle, an object of entertainment. The air is thick with the smell of dust, sweat, and anticipation. You step onto the sand, perhaps facing another gladiator, or a wild beast. The fight is brutal, fast, and unforgiving. You feel the clang of steel on steel, the sharp impact of a shield, the burning pain of a wound. Your training kicks in. Your instincts take over. You fight not just for your life, but for the chance to impress the crowd, the emperor, or the wealthy patron who sponsors the games. Because if you fight bravely, even if you lose, you might be spared by a thumbs-up gesture from the emperor. If you fight poorly, or show cowardice, your fate is sealed with a thumbs down, signaling death. The reality of your profession means a life expectancy that is terrifyingly short. While some gladiators survived multiple bouts and even gained a degree of celebrity, becoming heroes to the masses, for the vast majority, each fight was potentially their last. Many died in their first few contests. The cumulative effect of injuries, infections, and brutal training meant that even the lucky ones often suffered chronic pain and early deaths. It's a life lived on the razor's edge, where every breath is a borrowed one. One common misconception about gladiators is that every fight ended in death. While many did, a significant number of fights were to a submission, with the loser begging for mercy, and their fate decided by the crowd or the sponsoring editor of the games. However, even if you were spared, you were still horribly injured and faced the next fight. Your social standing is paradoxical. On one hand, you are despised as a slave or a criminal, at the absolute bottom of Roman society. On the other hand, you are adored as a celebrity, a sex symbol, a subject of fascination. Wealthy Romans gamble on your fights. Women swoon over your bravery, and graffiti celebrates your victories. It's a bizarre dichotomy, where your ultimate humiliation is also the source of your fleeting fame. You are literally a piece of meat, but one that is admired for its strength and willingness to face death. Academic debate still continues about the exact psychological impact of gladiatorial combat on the fighters themselves, and how much of their public persona was genuine bravery versus sheer terror and desperation. It's likely a complex mix of all these emotions, pushing human endurance to its absolute limits. So, as the roar of the crowd fades, and you either stagger away, bleeding and broken, or lie motionless on the blood-soaked sand, you understand the true cost of Roman entertainment, the grandeur of the Colosseum, the thrill of the games. It was all built on the bodies and shattered lives of people like you. This is the ultimate awful job, where your very existence is a countdown to your demise. And from this bloody arena, we now descend into another dark and dangerous realm, the Roman mines. You've survived the stench of the foolery and the blood-soaked sand of the arena. Now, prepare to descend into a darkness far more profound. A job that often served as a death sentence for those condemned to it, the miner. In the Roman Empire, the mines were not just workplaces. They were prisons, often literally, where human lives were relentlessly consumed for the extraction of precious metals and vital resources. Imagine yourself in the depths of a Roman mine, perhaps a silver mine in Spain or a gold mine in Dacia. The air is immediately thick with dust, the smell of damp earth, and the faint, unsettling scent of sulfur. The claustrophobia is immediate and oppressive. You are deep underground, far from the sun, in a world lit only by the flickering, smoky glow of oil lamps, the narrow tunnels, barely wide enough to stand or crouch in, press in on all sides, the weight of the earth above a constant, terrifying presence. This is a perpetual night, colder than outside, yet stifling due to the lack of ventilation and the sheer number of bodies toiling in the confined space. Your work is ceaseless. brutal and incredibly dangerous. Armed with a pickaxe and a hammer, you hack away at the rock face, hour after agonizing hour, the sound of metal on stone, echoing in the confined space, is relentless. A monotonous rhythm of despair. You fill baskets with broken rock, which are then hauled up by others, often women and children, through narrow shafts using ropes and winches. The physical toll is immense. Your muscles ache, your hands are raw and blistered, and your lungs burn from inhaling the dust and noxious fumes. The dangers of this profession are terrifyingly real. Cave-ins are a constant threat. A sudden tremor, a creaking groan from the timbers supporting the tunnel, and you could be buried alive in an instant. Gases, particularly methane and carbon monoxide, accumulate in poorly ventilated areas, leading to sudden unconsciousness and death. Imagine inhaling a breath of seemingly normal air, only to collapse silently. Your life extinguished before you even know what happened. Flooding is another danger, as underground springs can suddenly burst forth, drowning workers or trapping them in collapsing sections. You are often literally chained, especially if you are a condemned criminal or a particularly rebellious slave. Guards, usually armed soldiers, patrol the tunnels, ensuring no one slacks off or attempts to escape. The punishment for disobedience or poor performance is immediate and brutal, a stark reminder that your life is considered utterly expendable. You learn to work quickly, efficiently, and silently, doing whatever it takes to avoid the overseer's whip. The conditions are incredibly unhygienic. There are no proper latrines, so waste accumulates in the tunnels, attracting rats and contributing to the spread of disease. Clean water is scarce, and the food you receive is often meager and unappetizing, just enough to keep you alive and working. This combination of poor nutrition, relentless labor, and unsanitary conditions leads to rampant disease, respiratory illnesses, infections from untreated wounds, and chronic exhaustion are your constant companions. Your teeth might crumble from poor diet, and your joints will ache constantly from the strenuous work. One striking, yet often overlooked detail is the use of fire setting in some Roman mines. To break particularly hard rock, miners would light fires against the rock face, then douse it with cold water to crack it. This created immense heat, thick smoke, and deadly fumes, making an already hellish environment even more dangerous. You would be among those forced to endure these suffocating conditions, risking suffocation or severe burns. Life expectancy for a Roman miner was notoriously short, often just a few years. It was considered such a dreadful fate that severe criminals were condemned to the mines as a punishment often worse than death. You are aware of this grim statistic, and it breeds a deep sense of fatalism. Every sunrise you miss, every breath of fresh air you crave, becomes a poignant reminder of the life you're losing. One agonizing pickaxe swing at a time. Academic debate still continues about the exact composition of the mining workforce, with some scholars arguing for a mix of slaves, condemned criminals, and desperate free laborers. Regardless of their legal status, the conditions in the mines were universally abhorrent, representing the extreme end of Roman exploitation. So, as you emerge, perhaps briefly, from the suffocating darkness of the mine, your body aching, your lungs burning, and your spirit heavy, you understand the true cost of Roman wealth. The gold that adorned emperors, the silver that minted coins, the iron that forged legions, it was all extracted by hands like yours, in conditions that systematically stripped away your humanity. This is a job that literally grinds you into the earth. And from this subterranean nightmare, we will now ascend to a different kind of grim duty handling the dead. You've escaped the suffocating darkness of the mines, but your journey through the awful jobs of ancient Rome isn't over. Now, you'll find yourself performing duties that most Romans would shun. Handling the grim reality of mortality, you are a corpse handler, one of the many unsung individuals responsible for managing the dead in a sprawling, densely populated city where hygiene was rudimentary at best. This is a job of constant exposure to disease, putrefaction, and the raw sorrow of others, often with little dignity for yourself. Imagine the city of Rome. With a population approaching 1 million at its peak, death was a constant presence. People died from illness, accident, violence, and old age every single day. And when they died, their bodies had to be handled, prepared, and transported for burial or cremation. This is where you come in. Your daily life involves dealing with human remains, often in conditions that would horrify modern sensibilities. Your duties could vary, but primarily involve the direct handling of dead bodies. You might be called to a humble apartment building insula in a crowded district, where someone has just passed away. The room is small, perhaps shared by many. The air is thick, and the smell of death, even if recent, is already beginning to set in, especially in the sweltering Roman summer. You are responsible for carrying the deceased, sometimes wrapped in a simple shroud, down narrow, winding staircases, through crowded streets, to the designated burial grounds or cremation pyres outside the city walls. This is physically demanding work, especially when dealing with heavy bodies, and it's always done in public view, often without ceremony or respect for the deceased, let alone for you. You also deal with the aftermath of epidemics. When plague or other diseases swept through the city, the death toll could be immense. Imagine the overwhelming task of collecting dozens, sometimes hundreds, of bodies from homes, public spaces, and even the streets. The risk of contracting the very diseases that claim the lives of the deceased is incredibly high. You have no protective gear, no understanding of germ theory. Your hands, exposed skin, and lungs are constantly in contact with potential pathogens. It's a job that practically guaranteed a shortened life due to illness. The smell is a constant companion. The sweet, cloying odor of decay, mixed with the general effluvium of a large ancient city, permeates your clothes and your being. You learn to breathe shallowly, to suppress the urge to vomit. But the smell becomes ingrained, following you even when you're away from the bodies. Your presence is often marked by this invisible shroud of death, making you an outcast in society, one particularly grim, yet historically accurate. Detail is the common practice of mass burials in communal pits, particularly for the poor and unidentified. You might be involved in hauling bodies to these puticuli outside the Esquiline Gate, simply dropping them into open pits alongside dozens of others. This lack of individual respect for the deceased underscores the overall dehumanization of the entire process, including for those like you who perform the labor. Your social standing is extremely low. You are often a slave, or a free person from the absolute bottom rung of society, with no other options. Your work is considered unclean and polluting. People would avoid contact with you, believing you carried the taint of death. You are the ultimate pariah, a necessary but despised part of the Roman urban landscape. No one thanks you for your service. They merely tolerate your existence. This profession highlights the vastly different attitudes towards death and sanitation in the ancient world compared to today. The Romans, despite their impressive engineering for water supply, had rudimentary waste disposal and even less understanding of public health in relation to the dead. The fact that a designated profession existed to handle corpses speaks to the scale of mortality and the need for someone to do this abhorrent, yet vital, work. Academic debate still continues about the exact rituals and variations in Roman burial practices across different social classes, but for the vast majority of the population, especially the poor, the handling of their bodies after death was a crude and undignified affair, making your job consistently unpleasant. So, as you wash your hands, trying in vain to scrub away the persistent stench and the indelible images, you realize that even in death, the Roman Empire demanded its grim service. The dead, like the living, required management, and that management fell to those at the lowest ebb of society. It's a job that grinds not just your body, but your spirit, exposing you daily to the raw, unfiltered reality of human mortality. From the handling of cold bodies, we now turn to the hot, grueling, and equally monotonous work of grinding grain in a Roman bakery. You've braved the grim realities of handling the dead. Now, Step into a world of relentless heat, dust, and unending physical exertion, the pastrinum slave, grinding grain in an ancient Roman bakery. This job might not carry the immediate threat of death like the gladiatorial arena or the mines, but it's a slow, agonizing grind that breaks your body and spirit with monotonous, repetitive labor. Imagine stepping into a large Roman bakery, a pastrinum. The first thing that hits you is the intense heat radiating from the massive brick ovens. The air is thick with flour dust, clinging to everything, coating your clothes, your hair, and settling in your lungs. The constant rhythmic sound of heavy millstones turning and grinding fills the space, a dull, droning noise that will become the soundtrack of your existence. This isn't a quaint, artisanal bakery. It's an industrial operation, designed to produce vast quantities of bread for Rome's hungry populace. And you are its engine. Your primary task is to turn the millstones, grinding grain into flour. These millstones are enormous, often weighing hundreds of pounds, sometimes even a ton or more. They are typically hourglass-shaped, with an upper and lower stone, and you are harnessed to a wooden beam that turns the upper stone. Often, you are one of several people, or sometimes animals like donkeys or horses, tethered to these mills, walking in endless circles, pushing the heavy stones. The motion is repetitive, monotonous, and relentlessly demanding on your muscles. Your shoulders ache, your back screams, and your legs burn with a constant, weary pain. You work for hours on end, without reprieve. There are no breaks for lunch or rest, just a continuous, mind-numbing repetition of walking in a circle, pushing, pushing, pushing. Your clothing is perpetually covered in flour dust, which mixes with your sweat to form a grimy paste on your skin. It gets in your eyes, your nose, your mouth, making every breath a dusty one. The heat from the ovens and the friction of the grinding stones makes the environment stifling, especially in the Roman summer. You are constantly dehydrated, craving water, but often only given enough to prevent collapse. The conditions are usually squalid. Bakeries, especially those that operated on an industrial scale, were not clean environments. Rats and insects are common. Drawn by the grain, ventilation is poor, and the air quality is terrible due to the flour dust, which can cause respiratory problems like baker's lung over time. You are often supervised by a foreman, sometimes another slave or a freedman, who wields a whip and ensures you maintain the grueling pace. There's no room for slackers, no opportunity for rest. One striking, yet often overlooked detail about Roman bakeries is that they often operated 24 hours a day to meet the city's demand for bread. This meant that workers like you would be doing shifts, but the overall grind of the mill never truly stopped. Imagine the ceaseless, monotonous sound, even as you try to sleep nearby. Your social standing, as a pastrinum slave or a poor free laborer in a bakery, is incredibly low. You are seen as part of the machinery. Your individuality erased by the ceaseless, repetitive nature of your work. You are often physically scarred by the labor, calloused hands, aching joints, a perpetual stoop. Your life outside the bakery is likely equally grim, living in cramped, unsanitary conditions, with little to look forward to beyond another day of grinding. The physical consequences of this job are severe and cumulative. Chronic back pain, joint issues, respiratory illnesses from flour dust, and eye problems from the constant particulate matter are almost guaranteed. Your body will wear out long before your spirit, leaving you broken and used up. Academic debate still continues about the exact daily routines and living conditions for bakery workers, particularly whether they lived on-site or were housed separately. However, there's little doubt that the work itself was among the most grueling and monotonous available in the Roman urban economy. So, as the relentless turning of the millstone grinds on, and the dust settles heavily on your weary frame, you understand the true cost of Rome's daily bread. It is paid not in coins, but in the sweat, pain, and shortened lives of individuals like you. From the heavy labor of the bakery, we now turn to a different kind of repetitive strain, one that targets the mind and eyes rather than just the body, the work of the scribe. You've felt the suffocating heat and the relentless grind of the bakery. Now, prepare for a job that, while less physically brutal, inflicts its own kind of torture, the scribe. In an era before printing presses, every book, every document, every legal decree had to be meticulously copied by hand. This was a job of endless repetition, intense eye strain, and profound intellectual boredom, often performed in cramped, poorly lit conditions. Imagine yourself in a scriptorium, a Roman copying workshop, or perhaps in the private library of a wealthy senator. The air is still, sometimes stuffy, and often permeated with the faint scent of papyrus, ink, and beeswax. You are seated at a small desk, hunched over a scroll or a set of wax tablets. Before you lies the master text, and beside it, your own blank material, ready to receive your careful, tireless hand. This isn't the grand, sweeping narratives of history. It's the tedious, painstaking reproduction of text, often for hours on end, day after day. Your primary task is copying texts. This could be anything from philosophical treatises and historical accounts to legal documents, private letters, or even mundane financial records. You meticulously transcribe line by line, letter by letter, trying to perfectly replicate the original. Precision is paramount. A single misplaced mark, a dropped word, or a grammatical error can render an entire scroll useless and invite the wrath of your master or supervisor. The concentration required is immense, a constant mental strain that rarely lets up. The tools of your trade are simple but demanding a reed pen calamus, a pot of ink often made from soot and gum, and your writing surface, usually papyrus or parchment. Papyrus is fragile and prone to tearing. And parchment, while more durable, is expensive. You have to be incredibly careful, for any mistake means wasting precious materials and your time. Your fingers cramp from gripping the pen, and your back aches from hunching over the desk. The lighting is almost certainly inadequate. You rely on natural light, which changes throughout the day, or the dim, smoky glow of oil lamps after dark. This leads to severe eye strain. Imagine hours spent squinting at small, often faded, script, your eyes burning and watering. Over time, your vision inevitably deteriorates, making your work even more difficult and painful. Headaches are a constant companion, a dull throb behind your eyes from the continuous focus. The work is incredibly monotonous. You are not creating. You are reproducing. The same phrases, the same words, the same letters, repeated ad infinitum. Your mind, though engaged in the act of copying, often drifts, yet you must snap it back to attention to avoid errors. There's little intellectual stimulation in the vast majority of your daily tasks, just the endless cycle of transcription. It's enough to drive a creative spirit to madness, one common, yet often overlooked. Detail is the dictation method of copying. In larger scriptoria, one person might read aloud, and multiple scribes would copy simultaneously. While this might sound faster, it would also mean listening to the same text repeatedly, often at a pace dictated by others, adding to the tedium and potential for error if your attention wavered. Your social standing as a scribe can vary. If you are a highly educated slave belonging to a wealthy household, you might be relatively well treated, your skills valued. You might have better food and clothing than a common laborer. However, you are still a slave, owned by another, and your intellectual talents are exploited for their gain. If you are a free scribe, your income is likely meager, a constant struggle to make ends meet in a competitive profession. You might work for various patrons, constantly seeking new commissions. The health consequences, beyond the eye strain, include chronic musculoskeletal problems from poor posture and repetitive motion, carpal tunnel syndrome, back pain, and neck stiffness would be common ailments. Your hands might develop calluses and tremors from years of continuous writing. Academic debate still continues about the average speed of ancient scribes and the error rates involved in manual copying. While some ancient accounts praise the speed of certain scribes, modern scholars use statistical analysis of surviving manuscripts to estimate their efficiency and accuracy. often highlighting the challenges of the profession. So, as you lay down your pen, your eyes burning, your hand cramping, and your mind numb from endless repetition, you understand the quiet suffering of the Roman scribe, the vast libraries, the legal codes, the literature that define Roman civilization. They were all painstakingly crafted and preserved by individuals like you, sacrificing their vision and their sanity for the sake of the written word. From the silence of the scriptorium, we now turn to a more overtly shameful, yet tragically common profession in the Roman Empire. You felt the silent torture of the scribe, the relentless mental and physical strain. Now, turn your attention to a job that offers no dignity, no respect, and often no escape the pornai, or prostitute, in the Roman Empire. This is a profession steeped in social ostracism and profound exploitation, a harsh reality for countless individuals, particularly women. At the very bottom of Roman society, imagine yourself in the grimy, bustling streets of a Roman city, perhaps near the port or the seedier districts. As a pornai, your workplace is often a cramped, squalid room in a brothel lupanar, or even simply a street corner or a doorway. The air is thick with the smells of sweat, stale wine, and desperation. The sounds are a cacophony of drunken shouts, coarse laughter, and the constant hum of a city that never truly sleeps. This isn't a choice for most. It's a brutal reality forced upon you by poverty, slavery, or debt. Your daily life is one of constant degradation. You are a commodity, your body used and discarded by a parade of anonymous faces. There is no personal connection, no emotional solace, just a series of transactions. You are expected to be available at all hours, catering to the desires of men from all social strata, from rough sailors and soldiers to disgruntled merchants. Your work is physically and emotionally exhausting, leaving you drained and hollow. The conditions are usually appalling. Brothels were often cramped, dark, and unsanitary. Disease, particularly sexually transmitted infections, was rampant and often untreatable, leading to chronic pain, disfigurement, and early death. You have no access to proper medical care, no one to advocate for your health. Your body is simply a tool, and when it breaks down, you are discarded. Your social standing is unequivocally the lowest of the low. While prostitution was legal and regulated in Rome, those who engaged in it were considered infames, stripped of virtually all social and legal protections. You cannot testify in court against a free citizen. You cannot marry a Roman citizen, and your children, if you have any, inherit your infamy status. You are a pariah, shunned by respectable society, existing on the fringes, tolerated only for the services you provide, even if you were born free. Entering this profession meant a permanent stain on your reputation and the loss of almost all social rights. One particularly grim, yet historically accurate. Detail is the physical branding or tattooing of some prostitutes, particularly those who were slaves or state-owned. This served as a permanent mark of their profession and status, making escape or a new life virtually impossible. Imagine living with such a visible, inescapable symbol of your exploitation. The economic reality is grim. If you are a slave, any money you earn goes directly to your owner or the Leno brothel keeper. You receive only meager sustenance, just enough to keep you alive and working. If you are a free woman driven to this profession by poverty, your earnings are barely enough to survive, often eaten up by rent, food, and the demands of greedy keepers. There's little chance of escape, little opportunity to save enough to build a new life. You are trapped in a cycle of poverty and exploitation. This job highlights the profound hypocrisy of Roman society. While moralists often condemned prostitution, it was a ubiquitous part of Roman life, tacitly accepted and even regulated by the state, precisely because there was a demand for it. The existence of state-owned brothels even meant the government profited directly from this exploitation. It's a stark reminder that even in societies that prided themselves on their civic virtue, The most vulnerable were often systematically exploited. Academic debate still continues about the degree of agency some Roman prostitutes might have had, particularly those who were free and perhaps more independent. While some scholars argue for isolated instances of successful or less exploited prostitutes, the overwhelming evidence points to a life of hardship, social degradation, and limited options for the vast majority. So, as the sounds of the Roman night finally begin to fade, and you seek a moment of restless sleep, you understand the bitter reality of the pornai. It is a life stripped bare of dignity, subjected to constant exploitation, and defined by social shame. It is a job that costs you not just your body, but your spirit, leaving you with little hope. And from this world of human interaction, we now turn to a more solitary and equally taboo profession tending to the final resting places of the dead. You've witnessed the profound indignity of the pornai's life, a profession steeped in exploitation. Now, let's explore another job that relegated individuals to the fringes of Roman society. A role surrounded by taboo and isolation, the purifier of the dead, or cemetery attendant. This isn't just about digging graves. It's about a life spent in liminal spaces, constantly exposed to the rawest forms of grief and the pervasive Roman fear of ritual impurity. Imagine yourself outside the bustling city walls of Rome, in one of the vast necropolises. Unlike our modern, manicured cemeteries, Roman burial grounds could be sprawling, chaotic places filled with tombs of varying grandeur, from elaborate mausoleums for the wealthy to simple plots for the poor. Your domain is this space between the living and the dead, a place many Romans, especially those of higher status, would prefer to avoid entirely due to the strictures of religious purity. Your primary duty involves preparing the burial sites, maintaining the tombs, and ensuring that the dead are properly interred or cremated according to custom. This means constant physical labor digging graves, often by hand, in hard, unforgiving earth. You handle tools, shovels, picks, and crowbars, your hands calloused and your back aching from the exertion. The work is dirty, dusty, and often done under the searing sun or in the chilling rain. You are constantly dealing with earth, stone, and the debris of human life and death. Beyond the physical labor, you are the person who often interacts most directly with the freshly deceased. You might be responsible for assisting with the final preparation of bodies, ensuring they are properly laid out, perhaps even helping to place them in sarcophagi or on pyres. This brings you into direct contact with decay, with blood, and with the various fluids of a decomposing body, especially if the deceased has been dead for some time before being brought to the cemetery. The smell, though perhaps less overwhelming than the sewers or foolery, is still a constant companion, a sickly sweet scent of putrefaction that permeates your workspace. The social stigma attached to your profession is immense. In Roman religion and culture, contact with the dead was considered polluting, a source of ritual impurity. Those who handled corpses or worked constantly in cemeteries were often seen as polluti, tainted, and were generally avoided by mainstream society. You are not invited to banquets. Your presence is deemed undesirable in temples or public gatherings, and people might actively shy away from touching you. Your isolation is not just physical, but social, a constant reminder of your ostracized status. One particularly interesting, though often overlooked, detail is how ancient Roman cemeteries were often lively places, with feasts and commemorations held at tombs by families. While you are an attendant to these rituals, you are always an outsider, the one who handles the grim practicalities that allow others to mourn or celebrate. You are a silent, invisible presence, facilitating the rituals without truly participating in them. You also deal with the emotional fallout of death. You witness raw grief, the tears and wails of mourning families. While you may become desensitized to the sight of the dead body, the despair of the living is a different burden. You are constantly surrounded by sorrow, a bleak emotional landscape that weighs on your spirit. There's no counseling, no support system. You simply internalize the pain you observe. Your payment for this grim service is likely meager, just enough to survive. You belong to the lowest echelons of Roman society, often a slave or a poor freedman, with no other prospects. Your life outside the cemetery is probably as stark and unadorned as the simplest burial plot. The health risks are significant. While not as immediately lethal as the mines, constant exposure to decaying organic matter, unhygienic conditions, and the potential for disease from unembalmed bodies contributes to a shorter, less healthy lifespan. Cuts and scrapes can easily become infected. The dust from digging and handling old bones can lead to respiratory problems. Academic debate still continues about the precise Roman attitudes towards death and the deceased, and how much of the pollution was religious versus social stigma. It's clear, however, that your job placed you firmly in the category of the ritually unclean, making your social life profoundly challenging. So, as the sun sets over the necropolis, casting long shadows across the rows of tombs, you, the purifier of the dead, stand alone. Your work is essential, a necessary function for a society obsessed with proper burial and ritual. Yet you are shunned for performing it. It's a life of physical toil, emotional burden, and profound social isolation. And from this ground-level perspective, we now look up, literally, to our final awful job, the perilous, often fatal, work of building Rome's monumental bridges. You've traversed the spectrum of Roman awfulness, from the putrid sewers to the solitary life among the dead. Now, for our final, and perhaps most dramatically perilous, awful job in the Roman Empire, the bridge builder. You're not just an engineer, you are a laborer, risking life and limb to construct the magnificent arches and sturdy piers that spanned mighty rivers, connecting the vast Roman world. This job demanded immense physical strength, incredible bravery, and often exacted the ultimate price. Imagine yourself on the banks of a wide, fast-flowing river, perhaps the Danube or the Rhine, or even the Tiber. Before you, a colossal bridge project is underway, a testament to Roman engineering prowess. You are part of the countless men, often soldiers, slaves, or desperate free laborers, who make these impossible structures a reality. The noise is deafening, the clang of hammers on stone, the shouts of foremen, the creak of wooden cranes, and the constant rush of the river below. The air is thick with dust from cut stone, the smell of damp wood, and the ever-present danger. Your work begins with the treacherous task of building cofferdams. These are temporary enclosures, often made of wooden piles driven deep into the riverbed, which are then filled with clay to create a watertight seal. You are working in chest-deep, often freezing, water, hammering heavy timbers into the riverbed, battling strong currents that threaten to sweep you away. The effort is immense, your muscles straining with every swing of the mallet. And a single leak in the dam means the whole thing fills with water, setting back the project and soaking you to the bone. Once the cofferdams are built and the water pumped out, you begin laying the foundations for the bridge piers. This involves moving colossal blocks of stone, often weighing many tons, into place. You use a combination of sheer brute force, basic winches, and human-powered cranes. Imagine hauling these massive stones, inch by agonizing inch, sometimes on slippery, unstable surfaces. A single slip, a misplaced stone, a snapped rope, and a fellow worker, or even you, could be crushed instantly. The danger is omnipresent, a silent partner in your daily labor. Then comes the construction of the piers themselves. Rising from the riverbed, you are working at increasing heights, often on flimsy wooden scaffolding erected over the rushing water. You climb, you lift, you position heavy stones, your body constantly exposed to the elements and the risk of a fatal fall. One gust of wind, one rotten plank, one moment of dizziness, and you plunge into the unforgiving river below. Often weighted down by your tools or the sheer bulk of your working clothes, leaving little chance of survival. one astonishing, yet often overlooked detail of Roman bridge construction was their mastery of underwater concreting, a technique involving pouring concrete into special bags or tubes to set directly underwater, a dangerous and technically challenging process you would be directly involved in. Beyond the height, there's the constant threat of the river itself. Flash floods, sudden rises in water levels, or strong currents can wipe out an entire day's work. Or worse, sweep away scaffolding and workers. You are at the mercy of nature, and nature, on a massive river, is a formidable and unpredictable foe. Your pay is likely low, just enough to sustain you and perhaps your family. Your social standing is respectable, as bridge builders were admired for their skill. But it doesn't exempt you from the constant, life-threatening risks. You are often working alongside soldiers, who might have better equipment or conditions, highlighting the class distinctions even in dangerous labor. The health consequences are severe. Chronic injuries from heavy lifting, falls, and repetitive strain are common. Arthritis from constantly being wet and cold would be almost guaranteed. Respiratory issues from dust and damp conditions. And of course, the ever-present risk of drowning or being crushed. Your lifespan, though perhaps better than a miner, is still likely shortened by the rigorous and dangerous nature of the work. Academic debate still continues about the exact engineering knowledge transferred between Roman military engineers and civilian builders, and how much of these specialized bridge building techniques were developed through trial and error versus theoretical understanding. What is clear is that the practical application involved immense human effort and risk. So, as you stand on the completed arch of a magnificent Roman bridge, looking down at the river you've conquered, you feel a fleeting sense of pride. But that pride is quickly tempered by the aching in your bones, the scars on your hands, and the memory of comrades lost to the depths below or the crush of stone. This bridge, like so many Roman marvels, is a monument built not just of stone and mortar, but of the grit, determination, and sacrificed lives of individuals like you. It's a testament to human ingenuity, but also to the astonishing demands placed on those who built the greatest empire the world had ever seen.